Letting more viewers know you're live. Here we go. Hello, Kelly. Welcome to TikTok Live. Tonight I'm going to do a curb appeal versus a fix the floor plan. So this is Kevin Harris, TikTok. Typically fix the floor plan live, but this is going to be an experiment. We're going to try and fix the elevation. And I'm going to show you a charming house all on its own, but we're going to fix its elevation. And I'm going to walk through my whole process. Carl, welcome B, welcome Jeff, and Cynthia, Cindy. Let me see, Truck Monkey, welcome, welcome. Again, this is Kevin Harris with Architect Talk. I'm going to do curb appeal for instead of fix the floor plan. I'm following up on a house we did last fix the floor plan 2 weeks ago, and we changed the plan of the house and fixed it. Tonight, what I did to the facade, and originally the house had these 6 columns, but I'll talk through the different process, and I'm going to have a little geometry lesson on some of the rectangles that I use, and actually I have not on the computer, but by hand. I used I had some special triangles made. Welcome, we're glad you're here. And can't see. Anyway, this is Kevin Harris with Fix the Floor Plan.
Fix the floor plan.
And tonight it's going to be curb appeal. So what do you do once you fix the floor plan and you want to have some impact on the house? So the floor plan, I did the floor plan last week. And so what's important here is we have a central hall. We have 2 rooms, living room, dining room on either side. And then we have a veranda up front. So that's the important part of this exercise. But I want to go through the proportions and actually how I decided to fix the floor plan, or how I decided to fix the elevation when I fixed the floor plan. So this is a facade elevation. This is the front of a house, the same house that we worked on 2 weeks ago, that when we fixed the floor plan. And what is the facade? The facade is the face of a house. And this is the front door. And you want to keep as much as you can of the house in place because it's expensive to move otherwise. And what I try to do is respect my clients' budgets and then work on how to make it better. What's wrong with it, just like with the floor plan, except instead of fixing the floor plan, it's easy to say there's a 2-foot wide door, it needs to be widened and things of that nature. Open to views, open to each other so you can circulate around. On a facade, the complications are a little bit different, and they're all mostly in the third dimension, the X or the Y dimension versus X and Y dimension. So welcome, Stacy. Great to have you here. This is Kevin Harris with Fix the Floor Plan TikTok, and tonight I'm going to do curb appeal. So the first thing I want to start with is the rectangles that I use and what you can see on this project here, or this house here, is if I take this area that's by the existing columns, and this is the front elevation. So from the street, this is what you see when you see this particular house. And so it's the vertical dimension versus the horizontal, whereas the floor plan shows you the horizontal. So, Truck Monkey, do I have any advice for a 9th grade student interested in architecture?
Yes.
Absolutely, absolutely. You can actually get some Legos or Lego and build something and then draw it. Try and draw what you just built. I think that would be an excellent way to get started. Also in 9th grade, it's in Boy Scouts, they actually offer an architecture merit badge. And I actually got an architecture merit badge in Boy Scouts. Walk you through some of the steps that an architect will go through, plus the advisor that actually gives you the merit badge is typically an architect. So go out and meet some architects that you that you parents know. And I think that'll be a wonderful introduction into architecture. And follow me on TikTok. That'd be great, because I talk all things architecture here, at least residential architecture and historical architecture. So,
oh, and all these things you're showing today.
And what I'm showing today is going to put you way ahead on things. So, was in architectural school. We drafted by hand, and we had two triangles that we used. One is a 45-degree triangle, and the vertical is 90 degrees, and this diagonal is 45 degrees. And if you take two of these rectangles face to face by the hypotenuse, you end up with a perfect square. This is an important rectangle. The other triangle that we used was a 30-60 triangle. And this is 30 degrees at the top, 60 degrees at the bottom. All right, and these are very typical. And you can arrange these two triangles to get a whole series of rectangles in lines from, say, I think on a 5-degree basis as you go around. Now, what I found out and what I discovered in graduate school was that the rectangles, the diagonals that architects used throughout the centuries to design beautiful classical buildings, they didn't really use the 30-degree, they used the 45-degree. They used the golden rectangle, which is GN on this triangle, which I had specially made, and they used a square root of 2 rectangle, which I had made. Now, a square root of 2 rectangle is roughly 35.5 degrees, but it's one of those, it's an irrational number, so you just approximate it with 35.5 degrees. And it's a pain in the neck, even approaching the 35 degrees with 2 rectangles at once. So I had these special ones made, and my compositions immensely. The golden number, or the golden rectangle, is about 31 degrees. It's also an irrational number. The human body is, and many things in the earth are proportioned according to the golden number, which I have listed on my triangle as GN. But this is the golden rectangle, although this is actually in its triangular shape, but this diagonal here measures the ratio of the width to the height of a golden rectangle right here, okay? So I'll very quickly how to arrive at these two rectangles. And at any rate, so
Kevin, are you an Eagle Scout?
Yes, I am an Eagle Scout. And you have an antebellum design. Chances are it was designed using either the golden rectangle or the square root of 2 combined with the 45-degree rectangle. But let's start with what are the characteristics of these two rectangles? And I'm going to draw a horizontal line here and start. At a 45-degree, so if I go up at this point and then use my parallel bar and come across, okay, this is a square. Now, if I take the length of this diagonal, let's do it the other way. Let's go right here. And let's measure it instead of, I don't have my compass with me. Should have a compass, but I don't.
I'll go look.
My loyal assistant, Liz, will go look for my compass. At any rate, this measures 18 right here. So let's bring this line down, rotate it down to here, all right, to this point. So if I did an arc, it would be like so. It's called a square root of 2 rectangle because if you take a square, its height is 1, its width is 1. So what is its hypotenuse? And Pythagoras discovered this about 600 BC, and he came up with, anyone that's had geometry, the Pythagorean theorem, which is the length of the hypotenuse for a right triangle, all right, is take this length plus this length, which would be 1 plus 1, and take the square root of that number, and that'll give you this length. And this length is the square root of 2. Now, if I rotate this down, my rectangle now becomes height of 1 here and length of the square root of 2. And so if I take my square root of 2 triangle, you'll see that it goes from corner to corner of this rectangle. And so instead of sort of building my rectangle each time I wanted this angle, I have a triangle to do it. Now, one of the features of a square root of 2 rectangle, which is somewhat magical in many people's, in mine included, minds. If I take the square root of 2 rectangle, you can see this is a square root of 2, the diagonal between height and width of a square root of 2 rectangle. And I'm going to add another one adjacent to it, sort of parallel to it, if you will. All right? Well, you can go through the algebra required to come up with this, but this would be 2. So it's going to be, you're going to get the square root of 2 plus the square root of 2, which is here. I'm at 2 plus this number, which is the square root of 2 length, and you end up with another but larger square root of 2 rectangle. You can see it goes from corner to corner with the same, this is 90 degrees right here, okay? And so the square root of 2 rectangle, and this is why architecture is it, thank you, Liz. I've got the, my compass, a trusty compass from,
how old it is from how dry.
see how old it is, the plastic. Who made this tower, made this compass. This was from when I was in high school, oh heavens, 1970, when I bought this triangle, this compass. So just show you that my compass, it works. I'm gonna angle from the top and bring it down. And sure enough, it touches that point. So one of the wonderful things about geometry is it's repeatable. So I can draw it here on paper, and then I can go to, yes, you can do this endlessly, but here's the square root of 2 right here. Now I'm going to add another square root of 2, so but you have to do it parallel to the long side. So here's another square root of 2, and to do a shortcut, I'm going to take my triangle from corner to corner, and you can see it goes to that point, so it's the square root of 2. I'm going to do another one next to it, a bigger square root of 2, right? Well, if what I'm saying is correct, then the angle from here to here will also be measurable by this triangle. And from here to here, it does. Sloppy here doing it real quick, but it would go exactly from this point to this corner. But you can see that it's a square root of 2. So what happens with a square root of 2, a riddle I used to tell my students when I taught architecture at LSU was that what shape, when you double it, is the same shape? And what shape, when you cut it in half, is the same shape? And it's the square root of 2. So you can see as a building block, I wish Legos were this way, but if as a building block, you always have the same proportions that you work with, all right? And you can subdivide all sorts of wonderful ways. And I use this angle system of the square root of 2 very often. Now and it's because it keeps repeating. Now there's another one that works just as well. And well, actually with the square root of 2, in South Louisiana, the Acadian houses, they were all designed using the square root of 2 rectangle. So the roof slopes in elevation. All right, see this shape here? That's a beautiful roof. That's an Acadian roof. The for an Acadian house are about that shape. They're a little wide for a typical door you'd see today, but they're perfectly sized. And if you cut this in half, It's beautiful for a set of French doors. And so you'll see a lot of French doors are either square root of 2 or half of a square root. Because when you subdivide a square root of 2, what do you get? You get 4 square root of 2s. So the square root of 2 is still there. And if you look at a historic house, what you'll find is that even the window panes, all right, are going to be little square root of 2s. And so the rectangle keeps repeating, but not in a boring way. It's an exciting way. And so it's really, really wonderful. I'm Devin, welcome. I'm from Baton Rouge. And but the Acadian houses are in all of southern Louisiana, all over.
I was asking about what's the golden mean?
What's the golden mean? Golden mean. Well, since I'm playing professor, I'll start with it. Another one of these inventions, or discoveries actually, that Pythagoras discovered. And I'm going to take a line, and it was for centuries before Pythagoras, it was just a mathematical question that people did not know how to answer. They couldn't figure it out because they dealt with whole numbers, and the golden mean is an irrational number. And so I'm going to take a line, and you're going to divide this line somewhere, anywhere you want. But the rule is the length of A and C, all right? So you're going to use the quadratic form. You're going to say the length of A to B, line AB, somewhere over here. That's right. I just picked a point. That line over B to C, all right, that ratio equals BC over AC. All right, so what is that number? So if you try to figure it out, the only way to get it, it's very difficult to get it, but he was taught it actually, because he was a member of a secret society that the Pythagoreans founded and disseminated that down into even to the Renaissance and today as well. But the way to get this number is, I've got a shortcut. These are some wonderful calipers, if you will.
These have a great story.
I've got these I can tell you about if anybody's interested, but this is the pair of dividers. And you'll notice that the space here is less than the space there. Well, that is, I'm sorry, do it right here. So here we go. Can you see? So the space of these, it shows that this space is less than this space. But that ratio, and the way this set of calipers is set up, it always expands to where the ratio of this line length to this length is equal to this length over the whole length. And if I had made the claim earlier that the human body is proportioned according to the golden mean. Let me take my finger to my first knuckle right here, all right? Take that distance. And what you'll see is the bigger piece is at this part of my finger. So the human body is proportioned to the golden rectangle. Now, this finger's a little bit longer, but the ratio is the same. And same thing with this finger and my little finger. The Fibonacci ratio. The Fibonacci approximated the golden rectangle, but the Fibonacci series has it starts with a square. And so if the series actually, and that's a very, very good question.
Oh, well, did you finish that last one before you?
No,
golden mean.
I won't forget it because I need it for my actual solutions. So here I'm going to start with a square. And since Liz, my trusty solutions. So here I'm going to start with a square. And since Liz, my trusty helper, has brought in my compass, I'm going to take a square. And this is height of 1, length of 1, or width of 1. And I'm going to take this point, and I'm going to let me draw a line down here. And I'm going to take this arc, And we already know that this length is what? It's the square root of 2. Square root of 2 right here. Boom. All right, so that length is the square root of 2. So I'm going to take this new angle and its diagonal, which is right here, the square root of 2, all right? And I'm going to rotate it down. So here, and what is that number? And if you go through the math, you'll find, or the Pythagorean theorem, you find the square root of 2. This is the square root of 3. It's 9. Or I'm sorry, not 9, square root of 3. 9 is, or 3 is, anyway. So now we take this.
You might need a drink.
I do. I need a sip, right? Here we go. I'm going to have a sip. I would have been a much more happier professor if I could have sips while I was lecturing. Anyway, but if I take this diagonal, which is the diagonal of a square root of 3 rectangle, and bring it down, it becomes the square root of 4, which is what? 2. So there's actually 2 squares here. So let's prove it. Let's see. If that's correct, then this would be a square next to the original square.
So that's Fibonacci?
Yes. Let me do this. You see as I come down, that is another square. So this continues on and on and on, and so you get the square root of 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, boom, all the way down. All right? That's the Fibonacci series. Now, golden mean, if we take this and spread it out, I eyeballed it. That was pretty close. But this is, I'm off just a hair. So this length over this length, AB over BC, equals the length of, or the ratio of BC to AC. So let's see. This is now BC, all right? So BC would be this, and see how this goes all the way to here? So it proves it. It's this ratio works. So the length of this to this over the length of this to this equals the length of BC over AC. And I've just shown you visual proof of that actual ratio.
You've had a lot of new people join, so if they're joining now, what are you doing?
So a lot of new people joining. This is Kevin Harris with Architect Talk, Fix the Floor Plan. And tonight I'm doing a curb appeal. And but in order to do curb appeal, I'm going to need to show you some of these rectangles. My next rectangle I'm going to go to is the golden mean. And how do you get to a golden rectangle?
Would you label those? So what's that first one?
This first one is, let me get a marker. This is the
beware if you're sensitive to marker sounds. Trigger warning.
Square root of 2. This is the Fibonacci, all right? And this is the golden mean. All right? How does this affect your daily life? It helps me design better buildings, and I promise you, when you walk into a building or see a building, even from the street, that has been what I call, it's been composed using the discipline of geometric composition, it's gorgeous.
And so in your daily life.
In my daily life?
This appears like when you do an art project.
Oh, absolutely. Take Stephen. Read about Stephen Jobs, the Apple. Stephen Jobs, the Apple logo is based on the golden mean. I mean, it is all, and you can get close to it, and it'll look good. But behind every great man is a smarter woman, telling us what we need to fix. I agree. And I subscribe cartoons from when I was a kid, and Daffy Duck was talking to Bugs Bunny, who was having trouble with his marriage, and Daffy Duck said, "Oh, it's simple," and Bug said, why? He says, you just need birds. And so, what's that? And Daffy Duck said, yes, my love. And that's all you need to know. And so you're absolutely correct. So let me see. Go over the Fibonacci again. Sure. And I misspelled it here. Anyway, the Fibonacci series is if you take a square and you take its diagonal, according to the Pythagorean theorem, it is the square root of 2 if the height is 1 and the width is 1 of this square. Then if you take this diagonal of this length square root of 2 and rotate it down, this new length here is the square root of 2 relative to the height of 1. Now, bring that up and make a new rectangle right here. And then if you take the diagonal of that new rectangle, which is here, and rotate it down, you get the square root of 3. And do the same thing, take its diagonal, and you bring it down, you get the square root of 4. So it's a square root of 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and it keeps going. And that's the Fibonacci series. And so it's, and to prove this, the square root of 4 is 2. We know that just in our heads. So that means this original square, if it's height of 1, then this should be a square as well, which it is. And of course, this series keeps going on and on and on. So that's the Fibonacci series. So now I'm going to get back to the golden mean, and how do you do the golden mean as a rectangle? And after doing this many years, what I discovered was that it would be to my benefit if I had special made, which we use a laser cutter, square root of 2 rectangles or triangles for me, and golden rectangle triangles or golden number triangles like so. A square root of 2, this approximates it, but it's approximately 35.5 degrees. A typical architectural triangle is only 30 degrees. It works great, and you can get all sorts of angles with it. In between angles, it's always by the 5 degrees on the circle, but the square root of 2 is approximately 35.5. It's an irrational number, just like pi. And so it has a decimal point which never repeats. It just goes on forever. So if you want to crash a computer, back when I was learning Fortran as a freshman, you could put in the golden number or the square root of 2 or pi, and they'd tell you, don't do that.
Of course, that was also 1972.
That was 1972. So anyway, at any rate, you don't have that problem now. The golden is roughly 31 degrees, and it's a fraction after that. Now, what does a golden number do? Well, let's get to a golden number. So let's start with a square again. So I'm going to draw a square here. So I've got my 45-degree triangle. So it doesn't matter how high I make it, but we'll make it right here. All right? So here is a square. I'm going to draw it. Here we go. And then here. And I'm using a small portable drafting board with a parallel bar that stays horizontal. And the 9th grader that was interested in architecture, go buy one of these. They're not very expensive, and it'll help you draw and get some triangles, which are easy. You can get them at, you can't get the special ones I have, but you can get 30, 60, and a 45-degree triangle. And you get those at, or even Office Depot. At any rate, so you take a square. Now, similar to the Fibonacci series, let's take half the square, all right? So it's a half a square, and I'm going to take the diagonal of half of this square. And I'm not going to go through the geometry or the math of it, but this is how you physically get it, and it's very, very simple to do when you understand this method. I'm going to take this diagonal of a half a square, and I'm going to add it to my original square, which I didn't have leave myself enough paper here. It's all right. You just draw on the board. It's lead, so it'll erase easy enough. So what I've done is I've made my original square here, this diagonal of half a square to it, all right? And so what that is this half a square that I added, all right, to the original square gives me a bigger rectangle. Okay, that bigger rectangle is not the square root of 2, it is the golden rectangle right here, GN. And so if I go from here, golden rectangle right here, GN. And so if I go from here to here, sorry about that noise. All right.
And of course, they can't see it.
This diagonal,
It cuts off.
it cuts off a little bit. Well, let me scoot my board over a little bit. Let's see, how does that work?
Lagging.
Looked like we're lagging a little bit.
It's just my phone.
Okay. Chris, you love drawing with a parallel bar. I hated those drafting machines too. I bought some. Very expensive mistake, and so I got rid of them. But parallel bar and triangles, it's a way to go. You can control, and you can go much faster that way. You've got 3 months of grad school left and still use your triangles. Wonderful. Devin, where are you going to school? Be curious. Anyway, but this is my golden rectangle. So its ratio is approximately 1 for the vertical and 1.618, and of course it goes on forever, all right? It's without repeating. It's an irrational number, rectangle. Now, what's so special about a golden rectangle? Well, let me show you on another piece of paper so I can grow one. It's the square root of 2, as I showed you earlier. It was right here, and you add a square root of 2, and what do you get? Another square root of 2. Now with the golden rectangle, do this, take it down real quick. Still have my, love these drafting dots.
Tech in Ruston.
All right, Devin Boyd, Louisiana Tech, wonderful. Do you have any courses with Clark Maucho? Because Clark is,
Table.
oh, okay, there we go. Get rid of my pencil markings, very easy. There we go. All righty, so anyway, at Louisiana, very talented professor there, the teacher and interior design, Clark Maucho. And he is actually on my board of directors for the Institute for Classical Architecture and Art for Louisiana. And he did graduate a few years back, but he's now teaching there. So check him out and
Check out ICAA.
and check out the ICAA, the Institute for Classical Architecture and Art. I was the charter president for the Louisiana chapter, and now I'm president for the College of Chapters, which is all 15 chapters across the United States. And they do great stuff. Check them out online. You can go to the classicist.org, and I get wonderful information about them. So let me get to the golden rectangle. So let's start, let me see, just
Somebody's
right.
at Boston Architectural College, school there.
BAC. All right, love BAC. I did my graduate work at Harvard and envied the guys and the girls that went to the BAC. Y'all had one, I don't know if it's still how they do it, but you could work during the day at night. And I thought it was just a fabulous way of blending work experience with the university. So Guy Carwile, also wonderful guy at classical architecture at Louisiana Tech. Love Guy, wonderful professor. You're very lucky to have somebody like him who cares so much about architecture, teaching classical architecture.
Yes, one from Utah Valley.
Let's see, we've got Utah Valley University architectural program. All right, Nathaniel, great. Glad you've got it. It's still the same at BAC. It's wonderful. The work study is just fabulous, and I think I wish more schools would introduce architects to that whole to the business world while you're studying, and I think it's great. So, plus in a city like Boston, you get a lot of wonderful stuff just because it's such a wonderful city. At any rate, what I'm doing here is I'm starting with a square. Then I took my golden number triangle and did it from here to here. So this gives me a golden rectangle, all right? So I want to prove it with my small calipers. And these are dividers that actually show that there's a small space and a big space, and it shows the golden rectangle. And so you can see here, I'm putting these on this rectangle I just drew, and it shows that this length and this length are with the golden ratio proportion. So this over the whole is the same as this. A over B. Let me see. Need another sip. At any rate, it shows the golden ratio that when you divide a line between A, B, and C, the length of A, let's call this A, B, and C. So the length of AB over the length of BC is the same ratio as BC over AC. And these calipers show that, and that they, depending on how big I make them, it'll always be the golden rectangle
So
ratio.
where you got those calipers? That's a
Okay,
good
where did I
little-
get the calipers? These
Your
calipers
wife
were
gave
a gift of my wife this Christmas. And here is actually the brochure. They were handmade. They're wonderful.
So
So,
Etsy,
yeah, go to Etsy.
so you can get the name on there.
Let me see.
You found out about them at the.
I found out about them at I went to Charleston, South Carolina, and toured their College of the Building Arts, which is fabulous. You need to go take a look at it or check them out on the internet. The College of the Building Arts, it's only been around for about 5 years, but the 4-year degree, and they come out not only with a college degree, they've had some, it's a full, it's a accredited college program, but you also come out with a specialty in either stone carving, serious stone carving, or
And that's
heavy
pretty
timber, or plaster work, ornamental painting. Architecture is one of their degree programs, and then decorative painting. But there's cabinet making. But you come out. It's just a fabulous school. Check it out. But that's where I saw this, and the stone masons.
Plaster.
I'm sorry. The stone as well as the plaster masons were using this to confirm what they were cutting, and they got a block of stone and they're whacking away at it, and they wanted to make sure their proportions were correct, and they were. And so it's a wonderful tool, and you can see that it works. Anyway,
Golden Mean Calipers.
it's called Golden Mean Calipers, and here's the little brochure that came with them, and here's a cell phone view from Etsy where you can buy the set, and it's wonderful. I would recommend it. At any rate, here's the golden mean right here. And so if I take the golden mean, and this is one of those special rectangles where we're going to add to it. But what are we going to add? We're not going to add, like with the square root of 2, you add another square root of 2, and you get a bigger square root of 2. With the golden mean, you start with a square, take its diagonal, rotate it down, you get a new golden to it. And so here is a square. And when I add a square to a golden mean, what I get is a larger golden. And here's my triangle. this corner and this corner should touch, and they do, you'll see, with this triangle. This only works with a custom triangle that's about another square to it and see what happens. Because if you add a square to a golden rectangle, what do you get? Another golden rectangle. So it reproduces itself. But notice that its axis changes from horizontal to vertical. I'm gonna add another square here. And that makes, let's check it out. And sure enough, this corner to this corner, it gives me another golden rectangle. And that's what, you can keep going on and on forever and ever. And it just keeps getting bigger and bigger. As you add a square to it, and I know it's a square because this is a 45-degree triangle. Add a square to it, and I can do this much faster when I have a parallel bar like this. Anyway, down. And here we go. We've got a bigger golden rectangle. Let's check it out. This point to that point, it's another golden rectangle. And you can see that the second one I did, this line parallels, even with the first one. So a square golden rectangle gives you a golden rectangle to that, and you keep getting a bigger and a bigger and a bigger golden rectangle. Now, one of the uses in nature you see with the golden rectangle is, let's take this square, the original square, and take that as its center point. And I'm gonna draw an arc.
Okay. Have a sip and answer a question.
Okay, let me see. Let me take a sip. Can't see it anymore, sorry.
How does the parallel board work?
Pardon? How does that parallel board work in a way to make one easily? It's got a, it rolls, it stays completely horizontal. I can show you underneath it if you like. Let me flip it over, and you can see here. See? So, usually, sure, pulleys and some screws and a parallel bar, because the wires go through here as well. And that's, but check out, let me see, put two T-squares together on a budget. Yeah, I used a T-square in high school, and I got into college, I told my dad, hey, I need a parallel bar. And it was at the time about $100, which in 1972 was a lot more money than it is now. You can buy them actually used, probably free if you get an older architect. Hey dude, I want your parallel bar and I want the table to come with it. Sell it to you, or sell it to you for $100. But anyway, check them out. But parallel bars are a wonderful tool to have. And they always work.
What kind of paper is that?
Somebody wants to know what kind of paper that is.
What type of paper? This is paper. It comes in either white or yellow. They call it canary. I use canary. I prefer canary. But I've done a TikTok on it. But what you can see is layers. You can see through it. And so I'll do sketches on sketches on sketches on yellow trace. And it's not durable paper, but it is sure great for quick sketches, and it takes, now, let me continue with the golden rectangle, and this is the golden, rectangle, or the gold, and so this was the first square, and I did the arc. Now, here's the second square. Let's move the center point to here. And I'm going to take this diagonal, and I'm going to do an arc up, and we'll go to there. Then we got the third square we added. Let's come down to here for the center point, and we'll rotate it. And it does, all right? Or go to this last rectangle I did, or square, and let's rotate it. And it's going to be right here. And what you'll notice if I keep doing this, all right, I can even take the square out of here and do another one here, or take another one there, and you keep getting smaller and smaller, but you end up with a chambered nautilus. The chambered nautilus is literally proportioned according to the golden rectangle. And that's what you'll see. Architecture, you'll see there's a style of Greek columns, Greek and Roman columns, called the Ionic, and they have these flutes. They have two of these on the tops of the columns, but they're based on this ratio of the golden rectangle and this projection of it. So anyway, that's the golden rectangle. So what's important is that a rectangle give you another golden rectangle. And one of the compositional, it's not a rule, but it's one of the things I follow is it's called the law of similar shapes. So if you see a composition that has similar shapes, it can be very clear, understands it quickly. With a golden rectangle, it gives me all sorts of things to play with. But what you'll notice is, see this diagonal and this, if I take that point and go straight up, it actually hits this point. And so it can give me verticals, or it can give me horizontals that I want to play with. Like this horizontal here lines up with that here. And so for composing architecture, what's my roof slope going to be? Or where am I going to place a column? Or where am I going to place a dormer? It helps me with all of these things. And it's a tool that architects were taught from, at least from Vitruvius forward, and they knew about it before Vitruvius, because that's what he wrote about in 60 BC. So proportions is a wonderful thing and interior designers and anyone the square root of 2 and look at proportions as far as making your buildings look better or look good. So now I'm going to go to find it. Here we go. 2 weeks ago, I did a fix the floor plan on this house, and we fixed the floor plan inside.
You need to move it up. Get it out of the comments.
Let me see here. Put it up a little higher. Let me straighten it. Sorry. Here. I'll be approximately here. Okay. So let's take this. This is the existing house. Thing about the house and the facade. Well, they've got 6 evenly spaced columns. That's sort of an engineering way to go, all right, well, we put 6 columns, boom, that's it. And they're all the same space. And boring, all right, very boring. You don't ever do that. Architecture, you never would do that. At the very least, you'd make the space between the columns of the front door either a little wider or a little narrower to give you the focus, make your eye focus wherever the front you want it to focus.
You should slow down on that one and recap that one.
And then the 2 end columns are pushed in just by one, which if you start to look at the proportions of the Parthenon on the Acropolis in Greece, in Athens, Greece, it is, as far as I know, it is the only perfect building. It's perfect to all looking at the proportions and the combinations of the proportions, the execution of the columns and it's optically corrected so that the columns look straight, but they're curved. The floor looks straight, the walls look straight, but they're curved a little bit. It's, as you can imagine, to build, but it is perfect. Even architects and anyone that looks and admires buildings, you look at it, but it is proportioned. And so if I take this building, and let me take my trusty yellow tracing paper, which I can make a mess without messing up the drawing below. It has 6 evenly spaced columns, but there's also 2 sets of windows, which are like pairs of here and here. And door here, which was a more expensive door, and they actually spent some money on that front door. It's got a transom, which is the fan part on top, and 2 side lights, and then a door in the center. And it's a lovely door. I don't want to change that. They did want to go upstairs, which I gave them a stairway going upstairs, and then we put some dormers. But where are you going to put the dormers upstairs? If you have a bedroom upstairs, you need to have some windows, and so we added those. And I'll show you how we decided where to put the dormers. But here we've got this door, this
You just said that in the comments.
one. Not a fan of the columns. Neither am I, actually. And so I pointed this out to the owners. I said, these columns need to move. Now, the original owners of the house, I'm sure they were lovely people, and they didn't like the columns in front of the windows, so they made the columns wrought iron columns in front of the windows. So I agree. 6 evenly spaced columns just doesn't work for this facade. And so, owner, I said, can I do these?
You're lagging.
No, it's just my phone.
All right. So I'm going to get out my trusty triangles, and then we're going to start seeing, can I find any magical proportions with, and I decided to try. So here's the golden rectangle drawing I did earlier. You see this diagonal here? Let's see if that helps me any. I'll just take it as a, and the golden rectangle, the building's a little longer than the golden rectangle where the roof is, right? But let's look at it smaller, and let's see if I can find a golden rectangle in this area. And so, let me put this on top, tape it. Here we go. Now, I'm going to start with the center. Let's take the center of the house. We got it? So that's the center of the house. And then let's draw this is the front veranda right here. And the height that we're dealing with, let me see, let's measure it. So the height we have 9 feet from the bottom of the gutter on the fascia being this horizontal line, to the veranda is 9 feet. So 9 feet, and half of 9 feet is 4.5 feet. Be right here, and come over to here to 9 feet. And what you'll see is that this just came apart.
Well, the screw fell out when you
Oh,
turned it
right.
upside
Yeah,
down.
when I turned it upside down. All right. All right, a little wardrobe failure. Fix it. We got it. All right. There we go. All right. Now, my equipment is come to itself. I usually don't turn my board upside down. Anyway, and if you don't, oh, there we go. I got it. That works. That works great. So, made it crooked. Straighten it back up.
I can see your gray hair.
You can see
I'll know
my,
how old you are.
yeah, what hair I have left. Here we go. Brothers, and I have more hair than the other 4. So, here. That is not worth it. There we go. Get rid of that. Yeah.
Let me get you a
I'll
teaspoon.
use this instead. This will work. I use this on my sailboat to navigate on the maps. Anyway, but let's see. Is this working? Yeah, this will work. So if I take these points, which it's 9 feet tall, let me make it 9 feet wide. And that is going to be a square. All right. Let's start with a square. Now with a square, let's see what happens if we add golden rectangles to it. All right. So we're going to take our golden rectangles, and we're going to add a golden rectangle to this square. And it comes down right at the edge of that door, that series of doors. Well, I like that. Let's see what happens if I mirror it on the other side. All right, we're getting close. And so this is a golden rectangle right there, as is going the other direction, golden rectangle. Now let's add a square again. There we go. And add another square here. And I've already gone through this, but it's, and my parallel bar is not square. I don't know what's, look at it. See. For those just joining, this is Kevin Harris with Architect Talk, live tonight. I'm fixing a facade. I did a little geometry lesson earlier on the golden rectangle, on the square root of 2, and the square. And the Fibonacci series. So, at any rate, I can show you my, I'm having,
Flip that up.
just leave it here. It's not working. So, my parallel bar is having fits tonight, of course, because it's the first time I've used it online. So, you thought everybody used CAD nowadays. I took drafting in high school and loved it. People do use CAD a lot today. However, I use it. This drawing, this is my base drawing we drew on CAD. However, when I study the proportions of the house, I'll do it on a parallel bar. And so if I do this and this, what I've ended up with is, and my, I'm off just a hair here. Let me see. 24, that's right. Okay. So the, let's see. Aha. Okay. So what we have is a golden rectangle, a square, golden rectangle, a square, golden rectangle, a square, and golden rectangle. And then the windows should be in those squares. And so what we did, what I proposed to the owner.
So how did you discover that again? Wait.
What I discovered was that the proportions here are approximately, now see it comes over a little bit, so we got to figure out something to do. And so what I did was we added columns, and to make up for this dimension, I scooted in a little bit the proportions on one side because the front door was not actually centered on the house, which is a surprise that we find that a lot. But that's what happened. So let me get my pen, and I decided, okay, we'll put a column here. All right. I'll put another column here. And I'll have a bigger space, a column here. And then I'll have a column here, column here, column here, and a column here, and then one on the end. And so with this spacing, and I jostled them a little bit to pull them in, but primarily the spacing is a square and a golden rectangle, which is a bigger golden rectangle. And so I end up with essentially 2, 3, 4 pair of coupled columns going across the facade. And then we took the front, these windows, and there were, notice how the windows, like a 6'8" window on the 9-foot ceiling. It was just too short. And so we took these windows out on both sides. And when we took them out, we resized them just a hair and then made them taller so that the new doors or windows were up tall like this. Same thing. And we also resized them so they're centered in between this proportional spacing of the columns. And so we've got a door here with a transom and 2 doors here with transoms. And then the original front door, with all of its elegance, remained with its 2 side lights and its transom. And so here's a CAD drawing of the finished facade, all right? And so here we go. Then in order to get here, what we did, this is went from this, with just 6 columns going across, to this, with more than 6 columns, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 columns. So I added 2 columns. I also added nicer columns. These are chamfered, so
You gotta define.
they're square at the base, up to the handrail. Then they're an octagon. They're perfectly square, but they're an octagon. And then you go up to the top, and for the capital, it's just square again. And of course, then we have our architrave or our beam supporting the roof up above. And then the French doors we added, swapped out. We both centered them, changed the size. We made them a little bit smaller, so we didn't have to completely rip out the walls on either side. And then we added transoms above those 2 doors. So we've got, and then we took the original front door, and when we proposed this, the owner said, well, they really didn't like that front door that I was goo-gooing about earlier. And so we added similar French doors in the front. And we've got shutters that close, so we're in hurricane land, so it's advisable to have shutters that you can close when there's heavy storms, so you can shutter up the front of the house and not worry about losing your windows when the storm comes through. So what I used to help me compose this is the square and the golden rectangle and the combination of the 2. And so here is the square in the center, and then a golden rectangle, another square, and then resultant on the end is another golden rectangle. And so we use those guiding lines to locate our columns. And then we also changed out the doors to make sure that they all 3 had more like a colonial house, a Louisiana colonial house would have, with transoms above the doors. And then very common to the French Creole houses in Louisiana, we had